Pretty crazy day, man. What a twisted Trudeau Tuesday it was. Today should be a Wacko Wednesday. What a crazy thing to see the leader of the Conservative opposition getting booted out of the House of Parliament. Greg Fergus is a lot to take. We've got some really interesting videos to watch while we wait for question period to start. We're about 15 minutes out from that. I would like to mention to the group, though, that there's this group, Rebel News. They're a news organization and they're rebels, and their channel is awesome. We're going to watch some of their content here. I would recommend subscribing, checking out their channel. Like, I don't know. I think the people that watch my stuff would enjoy their stuff. So I want to pass that along to you. I'm not trying to use their material. I just want people to see the information, and they have a fun way of delivering it. So let's drop into one of their videos right away. We've got this. It's about the Governor General. It's pretty crazy. Let's kick it off. Let's go.
Governor General's role in Canada is steeped in long-standing tradition. In fact, it's Canada's oldest role, dating all the way back to 1608, well before we were a country of our own. Now, as the head of state in Canada, the role is largely ceremonial, and importantly, it's decidedly apolitical. However, recently, Canada's Governor General, Mary Simon, has violated the sovereignty and apolitical nature of her office by facilitating a policy roundtable regarding liberal government laws that have not yet been passed. To sign our petition calling for an end to Governor General Mary Simon's abuse of her role, please go to FIERRE.com. Now, the law itself that is so concerning is called the Online Harms Act, and if passed, it will be the single largest piece of censorship legislation in the free world. Truth be told, it's a violation of the long-standing tradition of free speech we within the Commonwealth hold so dear. Now, guests of Governor General Mary Simon's roundtable discussion included Health Canada's Theresa Tam, government-funded transgender activist Faye Johnstone, government-funded COVID hysteric activist Nilly Kaplan-Murth, and unemployed journalist and sometime TikTok personality Rachel Gilmore. One of the keynote speakers at the roundtable was the author of Canada's hotly disputed online harms bill, the Liberal Federal Justice Minister Arif Virani, where they all gathered around in a bit of a sharing circle to whine about the accurate criticism and feedback they receive on the daily for being benefactors of government corruption. The Governor General interfering with matters of national policy is an egregious insult to the role of the Governor General, but it's also an insult to the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and to the Crown itself. That's why I'm here today in front of Buckingham Palace to urge you to join us in signing a petition to King Charles himself, demanding the resignation of Governor General Mary Simon, King Charles' representative in Canada. She must resign or be fired due to gross breach of her responsibility to the people of Canada, the very people she's sworn to serve, a Prime Minister and his partisan appointee Mary Simon, who both want to live like kings without any respect for the Crown. If you agree with me, please go to FIERRE.com and sign our petition today. It's evident that Governor General Mary Simon has failed to fulfill her responsibilities to the people of Canada, and worse still, she's abusing her office. She serves a privileged few who suffer none of the pressures of everyday Canadians. Mary Simon's decisions have not only jeopardized democracy and a free society, but her decisions have also undermined the trust and confidence that we have in our historic institutions. By signing this petition, we send a clear message that accountability matters. It's time for a change at the top. It's time for a representative of our King who prioritizes impartiality, integrity, and the best interests of our nation. Go to FIERRE.com to sign our petition, and God save the King. For Rebel News, here in London, I'm Sheila Gunn-Reid. All is not well in Canada. The institution of the monarchy and our democracy itself is being undermined and abused by the Governor General. To sign our petition calling for an end to Governor General Mary Simon's abuse of her role, please go to FIERRE.com TheBee.com.
In our mad world, it's with increasing frequency that I come across a news tip from a whistleblower or even a press release. And after digesting the contents, I ask myself, there's no way this can be for real. I know for a fact that I'm not the only one questioning reality these days, pondering aloud whether I'm residing on planet Earth or that maybe I'm trapped in the Twilight Zone. Indeed, some stories these days, the only thing missing is Rod Serling in the corner smoking a cigarette and providing narration. I say I'm not the only one having difficulty determining if it's real or if it's Memorex, so to speak, because I'd wager that many of you are aware of the Babylon Bee, a cheeky and often hilarious satirical website. The Babylon Bee slogan is, "Fake news you can trust." Brilliant. But you know, a few years ago, the creators of the Babylon Bee felt compelled to launch an additional website called Not the Bee. Like the Babylon Bee, Not the Bee is a humor-based news, opinion, and entertainment website, but with one huge difference. As the name suggests, the absurd content is not satire, but rather real bona fide news. For example, here's a story I plucked from yesterday's edition. Quote, Minneapolis is paying a witness of George Floyd's death $150,000 for emotional damages. Seriously, end quote. What is more batshite crazy here, folks, that the emotionally scarred eyewitness, Donald Williams, is getting a six-figure payout, or that Mr. Williams happens to be a mixed martial arts fighter? Now, I might be wrong, but I would reckon that someone involved in the kick-ass MMA business is made of pretty stern stuff. And I'm pretty sure that in the squared circle, Donald Williams has seen his fair share of carnage. But apparently not, just for stating that his sensibilities were affected by an ugly incident. Well, the city of Minneapolis gets out its checkbook and compensates this eyewitness to the tune of $150,000 US. And a story like that justifies the necessity for Not to Be. The point is that real news has caught up to and even overtaken satire and parody. This is the reason why I think Mad Magazine, which used to be a money spinner, went out of business some 5 years ago. Just look at the madness that has made the headlines. For instance, can anyone actually still believe that former Oakville shop teacher Kerry Lemieux regularly showed up in class sporting enormous Z-cup breasts, which he actually said were real boobs and not prosthetics? Yeah, Kayla was suffering
naturally
from a very rare medical condition, you see, until he wasn't suffering from that very rare medical condition. Remember our encounter with him at a Burlington shopping mall last April?
I thought your breasts were real. Where are your breasts? Why are you dressing inappropriately in front of children?
You know, folks, I've been practicing journalism for almost 40 years now, and never did I ever imagine that I would utter the query, where are your breasts? Anyway, the Z-cups were AWOL that day, only to return again on another day, and then it was really thanks for the memories as Lemieux's ginormous breasts disappeared apparently once and for all. Currently, Busty Lemieux has transitioned into Bearded Lemieux, and he now still teaches at a school in Hamilton. But the question arises, why has this fraudster not been fired with cause? I mean, he lied about having a disability, a medical condition that clearly never existed. In any event, if I didn't have to be here at Rebel News World Headquarters in order to guest host for the Big Boss Man this evening, my original plan was to go down to Cambridge, Ontario. That's because I received a tip that a Cambridge school is hosting a parent-teacher night. Nothing new or exciting about that, really, except that this meet and greet session is exclusively for the, quote, families and caregivers of African and Caribbean and Black identifying ACB students, end quote. It's billed as Black Parent Information Night Cambridge, and it's taking place at the Galt Collegiate Institute and Vocational School. It is being staged by the Waterloo Region District School Board and something called Blues Cambridge. I don't know about you, but I thought racial segregation was an ugly thing of the past. Apparently not. And by the way, why did the loony left become so downright insane? Decades ago, the left, when it was dominated by classical liberals as opposed to Marxists, was all about stamping out racism, such as organizing a boycott, divestment, sanction campaign successfully against South Africa when that nation operated under the odious political system of apartheid. But now the left is all about new apartheid, segregating people into various silos based along racial lines and gender lines. Unbelievable. Anyway, yesterday I reached out to the school board's media relations team with the following 6 questions. 1, what is the ostensible policy reason for having a racially segregated parent information night? 2, given that this event is indeed segregated by race, is this not a form of racism given that others are excluded? 3, are there going to be other parent information nights based on race, i.e. Asian, Caucasian, etc.? 4, will there be other parent information nights based on religion and sexual orientation identification? 5, I am curious what Black identifying means. Does this mean that someone who is not Black but identifies as Black would be allowed to attend? And 6, I notice one of the topics up for discussion is progressive discipline. Can you inform me what this means? Alas, folks, it's radio silence, even though you would think that a publicly funded school board would be accountable to parents, taxpayers, and the press, but no. And while it is bad enough that the board is channeling a form of apartheid light here, I'm really curious about that bit regarding someone who is not Black but identifies as Black. What does that mean exactly? I mean, I thought race was that line in the sand when it comes to the wackadoodle progressives and their obsession with identifying as fill in the blank. Exhibit A, that early victim of cancel culture known as Rachel Dolezal. Remember her? Well, more on Rachel in just a moment. But when it comes to this identification business, I must ask aloud, what are the rules in 2024 when it comes to pretending to be someone or something that you are not?
All right, gang, we're going to jump into the question period now. I believe that we have something ready to go here, so we're going to do that. Before we jump into question period, though, this is going to be the format of the show. We show a couple of videos. We jump into question period. And before we jump into question period, now we take a couple of minutes to actually say hello to some people. Hello, Janet. Hello, Patty. Hello, Sheila. How are you guys doing? It's lovely to see you. There's so many people here today. Always Kirk is in the room. Hey, Kirk, what's up? Calamaru, good day, sir. Good to see you. M. Genghis Tron, what is up? D. Gillis, hello. What is shaken? Elizabeth, how are you? Two Flips, my man, what is up? Who else? We got Donald Logan, what's going on? Hope everything out there is pretty well. Kenzie Kraken, what's up? True Blue, my man, what is going on, brother? Bud Wilson, sir, what's going on? It's good to see you. It should be a wild day, guys. Like, yesterday was so crazy. Mr. Pickles, obviously. So, again, people are sensitive sometimes, and so Mr. Pickles is probably crying right now because he was the last person mentioned. He'll get over it. And are we missing anybody here? Because we don't want to miss anyone. Brent Persons, my man. Again, Raz, what's going on, brother? Nancy Caron, what's up? How are you? Good to see you. So I think we're getting through just about everybody. There was a few people here at the beginning. Other people that I might miss later. Hey, Clint, what's up? My goodness. There was Ladybug. How are you? What's going on? Peter Butts, what's up? And hey, Jane, what's going on? Anyway, guys, we're going to jump into question period just because it is kicked off. And D. Marie, what's up? How are you? James Fahey, my man. What's going on, James? Good to see you. Always. That's it, guys. Think Poilievre's going to be there? I do. So here we go. Now we're into their statements, opening statements. Genghis Tron, what's up, man?
Notre-Dame de Grâce, Westmount.
Good to see you.
Mr. Speaker,
Top Dog, hey,
May
what's
is
up?
Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Month. An
Kirk in the
opportunity
house,
to highlight
what's up?
The profound impacts
Nowhere
MS
Man,
has
what's
on
up?
all Canadians, and in particular on the 90,000 who live with the disease. Mais ce mois n'est pas seulement une question de sensibilité.
But it's not just about awareness. It's also about ensuring access to care, promoting research, and promoting inclusion. Let's learn more about MS and ways to better support those affected in our community.
Thousands of Canadians in wearing a carnation this month, a flower that has become the symbol of MS, of the MS community, and in hope of a future free of multiple sclerosis. Thank you.
The Honourable Member from Vaughan Woodbridge.
Mr. Speaker, as we bid farewell to the 5th Annual Sikh Heritage Month in Canada, a celebration of resilience, diversity, and the enduring spirit of Sikhism, we take a moment to reflect on the rich contributions of Sikh Canadians and the vibrant Sikh community flourishing in the city of Vaughan and including in my riding of Vaughan Woodbridge. April reminded us of the remarkable contributions that Sikhs have made through Canada's history.
What's up, Jonez? Good to see you.
Served with distinction in both world wars and significantly advanced agricultural innovation. Sikh Canadians are key advocates for human rights and promoting equality. Their unwavering commitment is seen through community-oriented initiatives like the Save a Food Bank and Khalsa Aid. Through their leadership, including in this most honorable house, entrepreneurship and cultural contributions, they are building bridges and breaking barriers and enriching our society. Sikh heritage is carried through the spirit of inclusivity and understanding, which are shared Canadian values. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ka Fateh.
The Honourable Member from Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of this Prime Minister, drugs, chaos, crime and death rage on our streets. Last year in BC alone, there was a record 2,500 overdose deaths. Since the Liberals have come into power, there's been over 42,000 overdose deaths. In communities across British Columbia, hard drugs are openly used, even in hospitals and coffee shops. Businesses have been forced to close. Parents comb through schoolyards, collecting needles, trying to protect their children. Kicking and screaming, David Eby's NDP government has finally conceded that their Liberal NDP drug legalization experiment has led to death and ruined lives in its wake. This failed, radical, Liberal NDP experiment
What's up, James? Good to see you.
Now. Full stop. Common sense conservatives will ban hard drugs, stop taxpayer-funded drugs, and put that money into detox and recovery.
The Honourable Member from Willowdale.
Mr. Speaker, once again I rise today to draw the House's attention to the horrific and wholesale abuse of justice taking place in Iran. The regime in Tehran continues to wage war on its own citizens. Several days ago, 33-year-old Tumaj Salehi was sentenced to death. An extraordinary hip-hop artist and rapper, Tumaj has simply been demanding that the civil rights of all Iranians be respected. Despite having already endured over 250 days of solitary confinement Tumaj has remained resolute in his demands. His undaunting courage has inspired the world. Over the last several days, thousands upon thousands have participated in protests across Canada and in other cities around the world. Each member of this House should add our voices to theirs. Tumaj must be set free immediately. We can ill afford to turn a blind eye to the unconscionable impunity of the Iranian regime. Thank you.
The honourable member from Durham.
Here we go.
Mr. Speaker,
this is interesting.
I rise in the House today out of great concern for all of us who live or work in the Greater Toronto Area. We have learned that Toronto City Hall is requesting that the federal government legalize hard drugs like fentanyl, meth, and cocaine. Evidence from British Columbia already shows that legalizing hard drugs puts the safety and health of our neighborhoods at risk and only increases drug overdose deaths. It is alarming and quite frankly shocking that Toronto City Hall would want to expand the Prime Minister's extremist experiment from British Columbia and bring it to Ontario. We ask that the Prime Minister reject Toronto City Hall's request and instead invest in the treatment and recovery programs that our communities need.
The honourable member from Calgary, Forest Lawn.
Liberal leadership race 2024 is well underway, and Mark Carney is the first out of the gate. He's been jet-setting across the country, preaching his gospel of 4 more years of broken, failed, and woke Liberal NDP policies that have made Canadians poor and Canada's economy weaker. That's why common sense Conservatives moved a motion at the Finance Committee to have Mark Carney testify. When carbon tax Carney is coronated as Liberal leader, Canadians should be terrified at his Wacko policies to continue to quadruple the carbon tax, continue deficit spending, and hike taxes. It's too bad the Liberal lapdog NDP shut down our motion and chose to protect carbon tax Carney, protect this corrupt Liberal NDP government, and protect their leader's pension. It's time for the NDP to step up and show some intestinal fortitude. Have Mark Carney testify at the committee, and for once, hold the Liberals accountable for their record of Wacko policies.
The honourable member from Winnipeg South Centre.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to commemorate the 140th anniversary of U.S. diplomatic presence in Winnipeg, a testament to the deep enduring bonds between Canada and the United States. Since the appointment of the first U.S. consul in 1869, our ties have only grown stronger, underscored by the consulate's reopening in 2001. This event was marked by U.S. Ambassador Gordon Giffin and Manitoba Premier Gary Dewar, who highlighted our shared commitment to cross-border cooperation and regional development. In 2016, commitment was further solidified when hosted North American Energy Ministers meeting. It was a privilege for my father, who was then the Natural Resources Minister, to welcome U.S. Secretary of Energy Ernie Moniz, along with other distinguished leaders. Their discussions culminated in a memorandum of understanding that enhanced our cooperative efforts on climate change and energy. As we reflect on the past and look to the future, let us continue to nurture this partnership that not only supports our economic and environmental goals, but strengthens the ties that bind our nations together. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Port Coquitlam,
I think I see Poilievre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
He's behind
Today,
the banner,
I
I
rise
think.
in this House to acknowledge a historic first for Canadian girls in soccer. The Port Moody Soccer Club U16 girls are the only Canadian team on their way to Dalian, China, to compete in the International School Sport Federation Football World Cup. This is the first girls team to represent Canada at this Olympic Committee-recognized event. It has been incredible to watch how hard the girls have worked to make this a reality. I encourage all Canadians to give their support to these young women as they represent Canada on the world stage. And it's not too late for partners to support the team to help ensure all girls, regardless of financial situation, can go. On behalf of myself, all my NDP colleagues, and the residents of Port Moody Coquitlam and Morin Belcara, we wish you luck. We're proud of you.
Hear, hear.
Okay, we should be ready to kick off here. They're kind of late starting, it seems.
The honourable member for Manicouagan. Let's mark May 1st, International Workers' Day, together. Let's mark it together and unite so our voices can be heard. It's a chance to remember the gains made by the great workers' rights movements. It's also a chance to highlight the rights that are yet to be won, like the right to EI for everyone who loses their job or whose seasonal work is coming to an end, the right to decent working conditions, including for temporary foreign workers and asylum seekers, the right to earn a living when the cost of living is soaring and there's a housing crisis, but also the right to be valued in the workplace, the right to live, not just work, in an increasingly fast-paced society. For those who can, join the Coalition's May Day March in Montreal. And I would encourage everyone to stand united in the fight for workers' rights.
The honourable member from Thornhill.
After 9 years of this radical
I thought I saw
Liberal
Trudeau
NDP
there.
coalition, crime and chaos are the new norm in our Canadian streets. In BC, the Liberals' dangerous hard drug legalization experiment has caused chaos in hospitals, playgrounds, parks, and public transit, which the radical BC NDP admitted last week. These Liberals ignored evidence when they granted BC's request, and overdose deaths skyrocketed by 400%. The City of Toronto is now asking the government to legalize cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl like they did in BC. That means kids in Toronto stepping over needles in playgrounds, more dangerous drugs, more people suffering instead of getting the help that they need. This extremist experiment has failed in BC, and these Liberals should rule it out for Toronto. The minister responsible is from Toronto. She could say no today, and she won't because her radical boss won't let her. Ban hard drugs. If they won't do it, Conservatives will. Care, compassion, law and order, common sense. It seems like we're the only party with any of that.
That's right.
Well said. The honourable member from Sault Ste. Marie.
Thank you, Speaker. May is Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Month, and MS Canada will recognize this month through a variety of activities and events, including MS Day on the Hill. I would like to thank all those who go above and beyond in supporting and championing for the MS community. Doctors, various healthcare workers, researchers, family support networks, and the entire MS staff and volunteers. I would also like to acknowledge the impact that ordinary Canadians have had through the years through their generous donations. This year, there is an $8 million fundraising goal for the month of May, which will allow them to continue funding critical research and programming that enhances the quality of life for those impacted by MS. Recent breakthroughs in research also gives us hope and will also give confidence to those who are living with MS. We stand on the cusp of new discoveries. Thank you to all Canadians who rallied around the country to raise awareness and to support those living with MS, including my son, Riley.
Oral questions.
Here we go.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Trudeau's there, guys. I think I saw him. I'm pretty sure I saw him.
Unfortunately, Montreal and Quebec are not safe from the chaos that the Prime Minister caused in British Columbia when he legalized hard drugs. In fact, the Public Health Director of Montreal has suggested moving forward with that same legalization. Will the Prime Minister reverse course on his radical position when it comes to legalizing drugs? Or will he impose the same chaos in Montreal that he already imposed in British Columbia? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, let's take a moment here to reflect on what occurred yesterday. You had to censure the Leader of the Opposition because he refused to withdraw his unparliamentary language.
Trudeau's taking the pot shots right off the get-go.
Attacks about a huge human tragedy in British Columbia. Now, we, of course, take this tragedy seriously. We act with compassion. We act based on facts and evidence. We will support British Columbia as they transition and adjust their pilot project. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. So, does he rule out legalizing hard drugs in Montreal? Yes or no? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition knows full well that our government acts based on facts and teamwork with provinces. The province of British Columbia requested a pilot project. We're working with them. We studied it with them. We gave them the green light for their pilot project. We have not received such a request from any other provinces. If other provinces wanted to have a similar project, we would look at it and make a responsible decision based on the facts and based on precedent in other places.
Position.
Right. So he is opening the door to legalizing hard drugs in Montreal and perhaps in other cities in Quebec. We're against it.
Minister legalized smoking meth in hospital rooms, shooting up heroin in parks next to children, using hard drugs on public transit. The British Columbia government has asked him to reverse this legalization for parks, hospitals, and transit. Will he? Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the opioid epidemic is hitting families, communities, and individuals right across this country and has for many, many years. That's why we are continuing to use an approach grounded in compassion, in public safety and public health, and facts-based decisions. We responded to British Columbia government's asking for a pilot project. We will, yes, work with them to adjust it in ways that they see fit. It's important to make sure that BC continues to do the things that it needs to do to keep people safe in its jurisdiction.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He still refuses to answer the question on whether or not he will reverse himself. He made the decision to exempt hard drugs from the criminal law so that it became legal to smoke meth or crack in a hospital room, including around nurses who are breastfeeding their kids. This has caused chaos, and 6 British Columbians are dying every day that he delays. So will he announce that as of today, he's changed his mind and he's reversing his legalization of hard drugs in BC? Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, a number of years ago, British Columbia approached us with a pilot project that they wanted to bring in to look at a different way of dealing with the ongoing public health crisis that was hitting British Columbia around the opioid epidemic. We worked with them as they developed this pilot project, and now that they are asking for modifications to that project, we are looking at those modifications, and we will work with BC as they seek to adjust their plans around public health and around dealing with this opioid epidemic.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, there is no time to waste. The BC government asked him to reverse his legalization of crack, heroin, and other hard drugs in public places on Friday. Every day, 6 British Columbians die of overdoses under this policy, and many more die as a result of drug-induced crimes. So there is no time for bureaucratic and political considerations. Will he announce now that his experiment with legalizing hard drugs in BC is over? Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, you will understand if I take it with a little skepticism when the Leader of the Opposition says this is not about politics, because he has been the one that has been pointing out vulnerable people and trying to pursue ideological aims on this ongoing public health crisis. We have consistently stepped up to work with provinces, with municipalities, with jurisdictions, indeed, including by moving forward with British Columbia as they wanted to try a pilot project, that we are working with them to adjust in ways that make sense. We understand the urgency and we will act.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, I've felt reassured for a while because I was sleeping very poorly, but now things are better. Wait, the NDP, they're going to vote with the Liberals for this budget, but the Bloc, we will vote against it. Now I'd like to read you something, Mr. Speaker, said by Ms. Amira Al-Gawabi. She said, "We are determined to defend the values of religious freedom and equality in our Constitution that are at the very core of our democracy. This is why we challenge this discriminatory and unconstitutional law. Well, Mr. Speaker.
On a dépassé le temps.
The member used all his time. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as a government, we chose to build bridges and links throughout the country. We invested in infrastructure everywhere in the country. That's how we build bridges. But we also build bridges by committing very thoroughly to different communities across the country. We listen to all point of views, and we understand how important it is to defend fundamental freedoms, the freedoms of all Canadians, regardless of their origin, their faith, or their language. And we will continue to be here to stand up for the Constitution and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. That is how we build bridges among Canadians. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Well, we're not talking about the same type of bridges. I am talking about the type of bridge that Miss El Gawabi is supposed to be building between communities. But as has been said, the privilege of one is the unfairness or injustice of another. Miss El Gawabi and her attitude, as well as the halal mortgages, this will make it such that different communities, Haitian communities, South African communities, they won't have the same privileges. So how do they explain this inequality in privileges? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, in a pluralist and diverse society like Canada and like Quebec, it's important to talk to communities, to hear all of their concerns, and to meet their concerns and help them with them. That's how we have a free, open, and resilient society. We will continue to listen. We will continue to be here to listen to many communities, including the Muslim community in Quebec. They are very concerned about the provincial legislation. We will continue to listen to all Canadians everywhere in the country, and in doing so, we will build a stronger society.
Burnaby South.
Thousands of Canadians are boycotting Loblaws this month. They're taking action because the Prime Minister refuses to take on the corporate greed, which is driving up prices for Canadians. The Prime Minister has set up a grocery task force, which has done no tasks and has no force. Today, Loblaws reported their profits are up by nearly 10%. Liberal announcements aren't going to cut it. Why is this Prime Minister letting big grocery rip off Canadians?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, like many others, we are concerned with the refusal of Loblaws and others to sign on to the Grocery Code of Conduct, which we know will protect consumers, will protect growers across this country as well. We will continue to impress upon them, using various means at our disposal, the importance of signing on to that Grocery Code of Conduct. We have also increased the Competition Bureau's ability to go after big groceries in terms of the competition or the uncompetitive options they're giving to Canadians. And we've also moved forward on other ways of supporting Canadians through groceries, like with the National School Food Program announced in our budget.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Continues to rip off Canadians, and Prime Minister is not stopping them. Les gens savent que...
People know that they are being ripped off at the grocery store. The Prime Minister has failed in protecting people. So many Canadians are tired of waiting for the Prime Minister to take action, so they've decided to boycott big grocers. This is a total leadership failure from the Prime Minister. It is his job to protect Canadians, but he prefers to protect the record profits of big grocers. When will the Prime Minister review his priorities? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to work with big grocery stores to ensure that we can increase competition. We also want them to sign on to the Grocery Code of Conduct. I think it's a positive thing that Canadians are expressing their displeasure with Loblaws for refusing to sign on to the Grocery Code of Conduct for big grocers. We will continue to be here for Canadians. We will increase competition. We're also there for Canadians through the school food program, which will help 400,000 more children in Canada study with full stomachs. We're here to support families through these difficult times, and we will always be here for Canadians. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The decision is on his desk. to reverse the legalization of hard drugs in British Columbia. The BC government has admitted that it was wrong. They decided not to go ahead with the full 3-year pilot project that the Prime Minister brought in place by exempting hard drugs from criminal law. Will he do as the BC government has done, admit he was wrong today so we can start saving lives?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, from the beginning, we've been there to work on an evidence-based, science-based, compassionate public health approach to the opioid epidemic, and that included responding to BC's request for a pilot program. Now that they are asking to adjust this pilot program, we will work with them to adjust it in ways that make sense for them. But given the new, more reasonable tone of the Leader of the Opposition, I wonder if he might take this opportunity to reassure Canadians that he does not support extremist white nationalist organizations like Digalong, nor wants their votes.
The Honourable
Poilievre's going to get frustrated today, I've got a feeling.
Mr. Speaker, that is false. And furthermore, there are 6 people dying every day in British Columbia. There is a 380% increase in overdose deaths in that province under this Prime Minister's legalization and subsidization of hard drugs. Enough trying to score political points over the issue. Do the right thing. It is on his desk. Will he announce today that he has changed his mind and reversed legalization of hard drugs? Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. As I've said, we're working with British Columbia to adjust their parameters and their desires around the pilot project. We will always be there to work in order to keep Canadians safe. At the same time, I will point out that the Leader of the Opposition refuses to say a simple thing, that he condemns Diagolon because they are a white nationalist violent organization, that he rejects the endorsement of Alex Jones, an extremist conspiracy theorist who denied the deaths of 20 kids at Sandy Hook. These are things that concern Canadians that he should also answer for.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, this is the Prime Minister who has to answer for the people who are dying every day due to his policies. And worse still, he's now considering decriminalizing hard drugs in Toronto. The City Hall has made a formal request for him to use powers under the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act to do in Canada's biggest city what he already did in British Columbia. Today, I wrote him a letter asking him to change his mind and reverse his position and make clear that he will not legalize hard drugs on buses and in hospitals in Toronto.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, we see fear-mongering going on by the Leader of the Opposition
Lord.
right now. I will recall for people that a number of years ago, the City of Vancouver approached us with a desire to decriminalize in their city, and we said, no, we would not do that for Vancouver. We work with provinces and public health systems. That is why we moved forward with British Columbia on a pilot project they wanted. In regards to any other province, whether it be Quebec or Ontario or anywhere else, we will work with the governments in place on proposals they may or may not have to deal with the opioid epidemic. That's all.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
You still won't clearly answer the question, Mr. Speaker, which is doubly concerning because Toronto has been overtaken by crime and chaos since he brought in the catch and release policies under Bill C-75, C-5, and C-83. Violent crime is up 40%. We just heard the tragic story on Monday of a liquor store robber crashing into a family, tragically killing a grandparents and a precious child. The assailant was out on bail. Will he repeal catch and release?
What's
The
going
Right
on?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I believe if you or other parliamentarians or indeed Canadians look at the transcripts of these questions and answers, they will see that I actually did answer the questions the Leader of the Opposition posed to me in terms of how we were going to work with British Columbia and how we would work with any province that came forward with positions to try and help with the opioid epidemic, and we would examine those on their merits. But the Leader of the Opposition has not answered Canadians' concerns about why he will not condemn Diagolon, the far-right extremist organization, why he will not reject the endorsement of Alex Jones, noted conspiracy theorist.
The Honourable
You keep
Leader
saying
of the
that,
Opposition.
like people are on you, Trudeau, bud.
The question,
You're not fooling anybody.
whether he would expand decriminalization elsewhere. He's using vague references to jurisdictions, but it's his jurisdiction alone to grant exemptions under the Controlled Drug and Substances Act. So, will he admit that his real plan is to take the decriminalization of hard drugs that he imposed on British Columbia and do that in all the provinces and territories across the country?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
No, Mr. Speaker. I think for 8 years, for almost 9 years now, Canadians have seen that our approach on the opioid epidemic is grounded in public safety, in public health, in compassion, in funding frontline workers, and doing things that work to save lives and help people. And it is not to have some sort of secret plan, as he proposes. But if he wants to talk about secret plans, he would probably do well to actually clear the air for Canadians about his seeking for support amongst members of extremist right-wing organizations like Diagolon.
He's not fooling anybody. He's making himself look worse every time he speaks.
That is again false, but the government is now suddenly and only partially changing its message on decriminalization. Prime Minister's Minister of Addictions is out now saying she's waiting for more information from British Columbia on its request to recriminalize crack, heroin, meth, and other hard drugs in hospitals, transit, and parks. Mr. Speaker, there are 6 people dying every single day. What more information does he need?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, there are dozens of people dying every day in provinces right across this country from the opioid epidemic. We could talk about the challenges faced in Alberta. We could talk about the challenges faced in Ontario. We could talk about the challenges faced right across the country. And different provinces and jurisdictions have different approaches. Some work better, some haven't worked as well. We will continue to be there in a thoughtful, compassionate, rigorous, science-based way to work with jurisdictions on directions that work best for them and adjust those proposals and those responses as necessary. That's what a responsible government does.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is challenging, through Ms. El-Gawabi, a law of the National Assembly of Quebec and to create a law for a minority within a minority, which did not even ask for a law.
So we have some new folks in the room. I'll speak over the translators. You can read the captions if you're wanting to hear what Block has to say. Who are we missing? Harry Taints, you just came in the room, I believe. What's up, Roxy? I saw you a couple of minutes ago. Dave, what's up? Norm, what's up? How are you? Chris the Fly Guy, good day, sir. Sheba Winu, how are you? Gray Whiteman, what is up? Trying to catch everybody. Salty Apothecary, how are you? Let's get the likes up, guys. That's great. Thank you. This is awesome. What a great crowd.
Better future, because these days young people are really struggling. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers want our law. Quebecers' money is going to the Liberals' huge deficit, and it's going to go toward a court case to fight a bill that Quebecers want. Can he condemn what Ms. El-Gawabi has done and tell her to respect the right that Quebecers have to live in their state, a secular state. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Canada is a democratic country. Quebec is a democratic province. As such, citizens can challenge legislation through their legal system. They can challenge legislation they disagree with. This is what many Quebecers are in fact currently trying to do because they disagree with Bill 21. That is their right as Quebecers to challenge legislation that they find unfair. That's what's occurring. It's fully legitimate. And these Quebecers challenging Bill 21 are not less Quebecois than other Quebecers.
In Canada's biggest city, gun crime is up 66%. It's 100% nationwide. I just shared the tragic story of someone out on bail slamming his car into an innocent family. 2 wonderful grandparents dead. A beautiful baby dead. He was out on bail under the Prime Minister's catch and release C-75. How many more will have to die before he repeals catch and release and brings jail, not bail, for repeat offenders?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I will highlight that we worked with provinces, including many provincial Conservative leaders across this country, to bring in bail reform. We'll continue to work on things that are keeping Canadians safe. At the same time, the leader opposite talked about gun crime. Well, we move forward with some of the strongest measures on gun control that this country has ever seen. A freeze on the purchase of handguns, a total ban on assault-style weapons that has been in place for 4 years. These are the kinds of things that the Conservative Party and its leader have consistently stood against, even as we move to make our communities even safer.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He mentioned all these guns that he claims to have banned and promised to seize 4 years and $40 million ago. How many has he seized?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, there are thousands of different types of assault-style weapons that for the past 4 years have been rendered illegal to sell, illegal to buy, and illegal to use, including at a gun range. Mr. Speaker, we are now working on a program to allow those owners to sell them back to the government for them to be destroyed and get money so they can go buy other guns or other products if they want to that will be legal. This is about fairness, even as we move to keep Canadians safe. Unfortunately, the Leader of the Opposition wants to make those assault weapons legal again.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
All those weapons are still legal, Mr. Speaker. You can still own them. The Prime Minister says he's going to seize them. He's going to buy them. He's spent $40 million doing that. So I'm going to ask again, how many guns has he bought? Just the number.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as the Leader of the Opposition knows, we are in the process of establishing that buyback program. The priority was making sure that those guns were no longer available to buy, to sell, to bequeath, or to use, Mr. Speaker, and that has been the case for 4 years. Now, what the Leader of the Opposition is conveniently refusing to opine on is the fact that he has committed to the gun lobby across this country that he would reverse the 2020 OIC that banned those assault-style weapons. He wants to bring those assault-style weapons back, or he can contradict me right here.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I will contradict him because they're not banned right now. It's perfectly legal for people to possess those guns. They are easy to possess, and not one of them has been the answer to the question, is that he has not seized a single solitary one of them. He spent 40 million tax dollars that could have secured our ports and our borders, and he hasn't taken in a single solitary gun. Is that why gun crime has risen by 100% since he became Prime Minister 9 years ago?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I will note, as did everyone in this chamber, that the Leader of the Opposition did not deny that he will be reversing the ban on assault-style weapons. He doesn't even think it exists right now. Well, Mr. Speaker, it does exist right now. It is illegal to buy, sell, or use any of those weapons. When the amnesty ends next year, it will be illegal to own them as well. We're giving an opportunity for people to sell them back to the government. That is what we are doing to keep people safe. That is what he will not commit to keeping.
The honourable member from Nunavut.
In Nunavut, the Arctic Children and Youth Foundation administers the Inuit Child First initiative to help kids. But their great work is being made difficult by this government's delays. Close to 70% of requests were not processed on time, leaving traumatized children without the health care they deserve. When will this Liberal government finally ensure First Nations and Inuit children can get the care they need in a timely manner?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
For your question, I absolutely agree that there is more to do. Over the past years, we have made significant historic investments in Nunavut, in the Northwest Territories, in the Yukon, in responding to the health needs, particularly of Indigenous, Inuit, First Nations, and Métis children. We will continue to step up. There is more to do, but my work with Premier Ahiaguk and others is entirely focused on delivering more services to young people in a timely manner, more housing, more infrastructure, more health care. These are things we are working on. We will continue to do that work.
The honourable member from Courtenay, Alberni.
In the last year, deaths related to the toxic drug crisis are up 17% in Alberta and 23% in Saskatchewan. Every toxic overdose death is preventable. But in provinces with Conservative premiers that don't have safe supply or decriminalization and don't believe in harm reduction, deaths are soaring. Alberta is on a trajectory to have the most toxic drug deaths per capita in Canada by June. Treatment, recovery, and harm reduction go hand in hand. Will the Liberals finally make sure all Canadians whose lives could be saved have access to these life-saving supports?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank the member for Port Alberni for bringing up those stats that show that there are real challenges around the opioid and toxic drug supply epidemic right across the country. Every step of the way, this government will continue to be anchored in a compassionate, evidence-based approach that looks at it as a public health crisis. We will work with provincial governments across all jurisdictions to move forward on measures that support and save lives. That is our commitment to Canadians. That we will continue to do.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Léonard, Saint-Michel.
Speaker, the federal government is committed in promoting Canadian values, such as inclusion, diversity, and acceptance. As elected members of this House, we are all responsible for our conduct in this chamber and outside of it. Yesterday, our government called out the Conservative leader for his behavior, for his courting of a far-right, white nationalist extremist group. Instead of standing up to apologize and distance himself from them, he has shockingly doubled down and threw a temper tantrum. Can the Prime Minister please tell this House what impacts the far extremism and its enablers have on vulnerable communities and Canadians?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
What we saw yesterday from that side was unbecoming of anyone who aspires to leadership. His refusal to denounce far-right nationalist extremism cannot and will not be overlooked by Canadians. Far-right extremism and its enablers pose real and dangerous threats to marginalized communities. This is not something as a country we can stand for, and on this side of the House, we never will. Unfortunately, that leader cannot say the same.
I'll get back to this at the end of the House, end of this question period, but I encourage all members to continue, aside perhaps from the last question, to continue in the positive vein, which I think Canadians have noticed that members have been taking today. The honourable member, the honourable leader of the opposition.
2 years ago, after having doubled the rent, doubled mortgage payments, and doubled the needed down payment for a home, the Prime Minister promised in his budget that he would double home building. Here we are, 2 years later, and home building is down 8%. His housing agency says it will be down next year and the year after that. If it cost him $89 billion in programs to bring home building down, how much would he have to spend to bring it up?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our housing plan is focused on fairness for every generation. We, over the coming years, will be unlocking 3.8 million new homes by cutting red tape, by rezoning, by lowering the costs of home building, by using public lands and vacant office buildings to build affordable housing for Canadians. We will be reviving the dream of home ownership for young Canadians by making it easier to save up for a tax-free down payment and giving renters credit for their monthly rent payments towards the ability to get a mortgage. We've put forward the most comprehensive, ambitious housing plan this country has ever seen.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The only thing it doesn't do is build homes. Since he made the most recent promise in 2022 to double housing construction, the number of builds is actually down and expected to continue to drop next year and the year after that, according to his own housing agency. Yet, he says we should all be assured because once again, he's spending tens of billions of dollars on the problem that he created. So can you tell us, in what year will home building actually rise? Which year?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we know well that the federal government has an important role to play in ensuring housing starts across the country and ensuring the opportunities for Canadians to buy their first home, to move forward up the equity ladder. These are things that we know we have a role to play in. But we are not alone in that, Mr. Speaker, which is why we are challenging and encouraging municipalities and provinces to also step up with ambition in our national housing home building plan. This is why we're putting incentives on the table. We're putting investments in the pockets of municipalities, including with our Accelerator Fund. There is more to do, but we will be doing it in partnership.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
That's what he's been saying for 9 years. And the result has been double the rent, double the mortgage payment, double the down payment. And just this week, a survey showed that 72% of Canadians who don't own a home believe they never will. Canada was not like this before this Prime Minister, and surely it won't be like this after he's gone. The Prime Minister a comment on what it's like to be the only Prime Minister in history to deprive an entire generation of home ownership.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the government that was in place before I became Prime Minister had a housing minister who is now the Leader of the Opposition in a government that explicitly said that the federal government had no role to play and no responsibility towards building affordable housing across this country. So for 10 years, there was very little, there was almost no federal involvement in building homes across this country. We turned that around starting in 2017, and we will continue to invest to create opportunities, to create fairness for millennials and Gen Z so that they can buy.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, he did turn it around, Mr. Speaker. 9 years is obviously too long for him because he's starting to attribute to the previous government words he said himself.
Yeah.
He was the one who said the federal government is not responsible for home housing construction or affordability. That is after he doubled the cost. When I was housing minister, we built 89,000 apartments at an average rent of $973. Since then, the rent has doubled, the mortgage payment has doubled, the needed down payment has doubled. So with all this failure, why is he doubling down?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our Housing Accelerator program, our comprehensive plan to build more homes, to make sure that Canadians can see themselves in home ownership once again, is exactly what we are continuing to invest in. Yes, I pointed out that we cannot build homes alone, that we need partners in the provinces and municipalities. But I never denied that the federal government needs to continue to act on housing. That's why we've done that since 2017. That's why we're continuing to do it now. We need to make sure that young Canadians have opportunities their parents and grandparents have. That's what we're stepping up for. That's what he refuses to do.
The The Honourable Member for Avignon-La-Métis-Matane-Matapédia. Today marks the start of this government's biggest contribution to global climate.
All right, gang. Just for a couple of minutes, I'm going to interrupt. Something that we're going to be trying here on the channel is a regularly scheduled evening program. The idea is to start at probably 10 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time, and we'll be running fun, cool videos, stuff that we found from the day. This is great in the daytimes, and we'll be keeping this up. I'll always be doing question period, but we are going to be starting a nighttime show. So, again, it's a work in progress, and I don't want to commit to too many parts before I figure out exactly what we're doing. But we will be here in the evenings. Should be 10 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time, so that's 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Do the math. So that's it. Wanted to let you guys know that we will be here in the evenings doing live broadcasts with this kind of stuff. It's been fun. We've done a couple the last couple nights, and it's been really enjoyable. So we're going to keep that up. So I hope to see some people maybe back later this evening. If not, check us out another night. We'll be around. That's it. We'll get back to the program.
Member for Avignon-La-Métis-Matane-Matapédia. None of the Liberals' climate change measures will be able to offset Trans Mountain's impact on the climate. All this government's environmentalist claims will never be as eloquent as its big pipeline filled with tar sands oil. All the carbon taxes, the heat pumps, the planting of billions of trees are simply unable to make up for this $34 billion investment in fossil fuels. And don't worry, the Conservatives will preserve their beautiful pipeline. My question to the Prime Minister, is the opening of Trans Mountain good news for the planet? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, for Canada to continue to invest in the energy transition, for us to continue to invest in solutions and help for Canadians, we need to have good prices for our resources currently. But as everybody knows very clearly, we have a plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We have plans to create tomorrow's economy. But today, we will continue to do what is necessary to be able to invest and create those green technologies, that renewable energy, and that future that our children and our grandchildren in Quebec and throughout the country are counting on.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Le Premier ministre a déjà...
The Prime Minister has already doubled the national debt, adding more to our debt than all previous Prime Ministers in our history combined, with the Bloc support, which has voted for $500 billion in budget allocations. The Leader of the Bloc has never voted against a single one. Today we learn that the Prime Minister will continue increasing our debt by $300 billion. This will increase interest rates on mortgages by how much? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we know very well that the plan from the opposition leader is austerity and cuts in services that Canadians need. But on this side of the House, we recognize that Canada is in one of the best fiscal positions in the G7 and the entire world. We have the lowest deficit in the G7. We have the best debt to GDP ratio. And we have the third largest AAA credit rating economy in the world. We are there to invest responsibly because a confident country invests in its people and in its future. The Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's decision with the support of the Bloc to double the national debt means that we are paying $54.1 billion on interest alone on the debt. That is more than we spend on health care. It's the total of GST. So every time Canadians buy something, the GST simply pays rich bankers. Why is he wasting our money on rich bankers instead of on services to Canadians? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, the waste that the Conservatives accuse us of is wasting our money on childcare centres, on more childcare spaces. They accuse us of wasting money on dental care. They accuse us of wasting money on investments in Northvolt, Volkswagen, Stellantis, and Honda to ensure there are careers for generations to come in a greener economy. They accuse us of wasting money by investing in seniors to protect their old age security. They accuse us of wasting because they just want austerity and cuts. But, Mr. Speaker, we will continue to invest responsibly in Canadians. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, families are already living in austerity. The government is living in abundance. People are poor. The government is rich. The more the government spends, the more things are expensive. For example, interest rates are high, and spending and loans from the government are making things go higher. The Department of Finance's public servants, have they told the Prime Minister how much this will increase interest rates on families' mortgages by borrowing another $300 billion? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we know very well that Canadians are facing an affordability crisis. That is why we are there with solutions for them. We've reduced the cost of daycare by half throughout the country. Aside from Quebec, where we've invested in more childcare spaces, we're there to invest in dental care for the most vulnerable seniors, for youth as well last year. We're there to invest in our students, in jobs for the future. We are there to invest in Canadians. The Leader of the Opposition is proposing cuts and austerity in his ideological approach, and it is misled. The Honourable Member for Dorval, Lachine LaSalle. Mr. Speaker, since 2015, our government has been committed to promoting shared Canadian values, diversity, respect, and equality among all Canadians. We all learned last week that the Leader of the Opposition visited an encampment. I'm just going to interrupt the Honourable Member. I hope she will have a question that relates to the government administration. She has 15 seconds left, but I hope she will get to the heart of the matter. Can the Prime Minister tell this House how the government will protect Canadians from extremist groups and what responsibility all political leaders have? Thank you. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. All governments are responsible for protecting the well-being of all Canadians, including Canadians in minority situations, groups who are mistreated, or groups who are typically ignored by the majority. We are there to invest and to protect those people. When someone who puts himself forward to be the next Prime Minister of Canada continues to court extremist groups, white nationalist groups, he should at least explain himself to Canadians. Why is he courting those people or condemn them? The Leader of the Opposition.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister is not worth the cost of debt interest. He doubled our national debt, adding more debt than all previous Prime Ministers combined. And now we learn in his new budget bill that he's going to seek another $300 billion of debt, money that he will borrow out of the economy. That's equal to over 10% of our GDP, which will surely put upward pressure on interest rates. How much will all this government binge borrowing add to the mortgage payment of the average family?
Hear, hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, allow me once again to set the facts straight. Canada has one of the strongest fiscal positions of any country in the world. Certainly the lowest deficit in the G7, the best debt to GDP ratio in the G7, and it's continuing to decrease. And we are the third largest economy in the world with a AAA credit rating, the top credit rating by the agencies that look at fiscal sustainability of governments. All that is on the backdrop top of further investments we're making, generational investments to support Canadians, contrast with the ideology of the Conservatives, which is to leave Canadians to fend for themselves, cuts and austerity.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, we actually have the highest mortgage debt of any country in the G7, and by far higher as a share of our economy than the Americans had during the mortgage meltdown. Now interest rates are higher and families risk losing their homes. Government deficits push inflation and interest rates higher. That makes the problem worse. So once again, how much will $300 billion of yet more debt add in mortgage payments for the average Canadian family? How much?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition is mixing different factors that are facing Canadians. Mortgages are high for Canadian families, and therefore the Canadian government is choosing to invest in measures that are going to support Canadian families. I talked to a family from Burlington who actually saw their mortgage mortgage payments go up because of the rise in global interest rates, while at the same time as their child care fees were cut by larger amounts because of investments this government made. We're going to continue to be there for Canadians while the Conservative leader wants cuts.
The Honourable Member from Calgary Skyview.
Mr. Speaker, the government has a responsibility.
Oops. Okay.
I apologize to the Leader of the Opposition. I miscounted in terms of the questions that we're keeping track. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, inflation and higher interest rates are the costs Canadians pay for the spending that the Prime Minister told them was free. It's not free. Nothing is free. Every dollar he spends comes out of the pockets of Canadians directly through taxes or indirectly through inflation and interest rates. Now he wants to do another $300 billion of binge borrowing. Will he put aside that radical scheme and instead accept my common sense plan to fix the budget with a dollar-for-dollar law so we can bring down interest rates and inflation for Canadians?
Here. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we have been there to invest for Canadians responsibly. We still have one of the top AAA-rated economies in the world. Our fiscal plan is sustainable and responsible. However, the Conservative leader still wants to make cuts to programs, cuts to our military, cuts to the initiatives that are helping Canadians across the country. The things that we are doing are helping Canadians grow for the future in a responsible way, and that's why we're seeing inflation come down and interest rates will be coming down, I am sure, in the coming months.
Now it is time to the Honourable Member from Calgary Skyview.
Mr. Speaker, the government has a responsibility to tackle misinformation and disinformation in Canada. Furthermore, the government has a responsibility to tackle hate and discrimination across Canada. And it's shameful that the Leader of the Opposition posed for photos with extremists who push hateful rhetoric. Can the Prime Minister please tell the House how the government is taking these matters seriously?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians have every right to be worried about the opposition leader's refusal, including multiple times during this question period, refusal to condemn violent extremism. But they shouldn't be surprised. Over his 19 years in politics, he showed Canadians time and time again that he will do or say anything to get elected. That includes pandering to extremists one day and pretending to stand with the very vulnerable communities those extremist groups target the next. Not only is this reckless, this is a failure of leadership. Canadians deserve better. Canadian deserves leaders that will stand up for them every step of the way.
What do you guys think about that? Trudeau makes lying seem so easy, but he's not good at it. He just does it a lot.
Port Moody, Coquitlam.
Canadians with disabilities have been ignored by Liberals and Conservatives for decades. The result? They can no longer keep up with the costs of living. And the Liberals' solution? $200 a month. That's not even enough for groceries.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, Canada's richest CEOs are still receiving $60 billion in corporate handouts started by the Conservatives.
That's right.
With the Liberals and the Conservatives, Canada's ultra-wealthy get richer and people with disabilities get crumbs. Why has the Prime Minister abandoned Canadians living with disabilities?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Canada Disability Benefit is a monumental step in our strong and unwavering commitment to creating a more inclusive and fairer Canada. We're now moving forward with the first step of the disability benefit at the cost of over $6 billion over the coming years. It will put hundreds of dollars a month tax-free in the pockets of the most vulnerable persons with disabilities, and we're continuing to commit to creating a better, fairer country for generations to come.
The Honourable Member for Richmond Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, more than 20 economic organizations in the country have raised a red flag over the major risk of failure in the implementation of a new computer software scheduled for May 13th to manage Canada Border Services Agency assessments and revenues after the financial and human disasters of Phoenix and Arrivecan. It would be a catastrophe to have a third failure, again costing millions of taxpayers' dollars. Can the Prime Minister tell us whether his government intends to postpone the implementation date and what he intends to do to ensure that this doesn't turn into another IT fiasco that would cost millions? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are very aware of the concerns from different groups in this sector and from the Canada Border Services Agency. We are working closely to ensure we have a success, and so we can set up a better software. We know that digitalization will ensure more security, more efficiency, more speed in our international trade and when people are crossing our borders. So we will continue to advance on this, but we will do it attentively and aware of the risks and also of the positive side of a new software. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Colleagues, I indicated that I would just come back to an issue that came up in terms of a question earlier today that didn't deal with the administration or the business of the administration of government. I'd like to let I intervened on another question which I thought was going in that direction. There seems to have been a correction being made. I want to make it clear to colleagues that the chair and the chair occupants have been discussing this issue, and I think it's very important that all questions that are going to be asked in this House are asked that respect our regulations in our procedures to making sure that questions are relevant to the business of the administration of government. I refer members to a decision that I made, that the chair made November 20th of last year, and of course there have been previous decisions made by previous speakers along the same lines.
Well, I guess we're done with that for today. So we're jumping straight into some other videos, guys. I've got a few things here to watch, and we're going to kick it off. Let's keep it rolling. Sorry if there's going to be a boost in
the
sound.
2021 campaign, you used words talking about people, framing them as anti-vaxxer mobs. You talked about their racist and misogynist agenda. Do you regret using language like that, though? And do you think that that has added to how people think about you?
I regret that when I was talking about specific groups of racist, intolerant protesters, not everyone in the protest, but the ones who were shouting racial epithets and misogynistic slurs at my security detail and others, I'm going to call out intolerance and hateful language wherever it has. It is unfortunate that what I said was able to be that made a number of people feel I was talking about them. I have always been very, very careful to know
animated explainer
people can
videos are the best way to
make own
capture
decisions
attention.
about
get more
whether they get
followers, and
vaccinated
drive
or
more
not.
sales.
There's
They're
normal
engaging
vaccine
to watch,
hesitancy out there in every
super
population, and our
shareable,
job as
convert better,
a
and make you
government
feel
is
like
to try
you're
and
watching a
encourage
Pixar
people to do the right things for
Which
public
is why
health.
they're
The
used
fact
by
that
massive
the
brands.
polarization and the toxicity was so amplified deliberately with misinformation and disinformation is something that is a larger question than just, what I said on one particular day that was taken out of context. It's about whether Canadians are actually listening to each other and talking with each other and hearing each other and trying to remember that we are all in this together as citizens.
Where some MPs are asking why the federal government did not warn them that they were being targeted by Chinese hackers back in 2021. Liberal MP John McKay and Conservative MP Garnet Jenis are co-chairs of the Interparliamentary Alliance on China here in Canada, and they say they were only recently informed the organization and more than a dozen Canadian MPs who belong to it were targeted. MP Jenis had this to say after rising in the House of Commons today on what's known as a question of privilege. Take a listen.
It is unacceptable that we were not informed about this following another incident where a member of Parliament was targeted by the PRC and not informed about it. Assurances have been given that members would be informed going forward, but this still appears not to be happening.
And Conservative MP Garnet Jenis alongside Liberal MP John McKay are with me live in studio. Hello to both of you. Thank you very much for making the time. Mr. Jenis, you rose in the House of Commons, so yes. I'll start with you. First of all, just for our audience who may not be familiar with IPAC, can you describe what it is the two of you belong to and why it may have been targeted by hackers?
Absolutely. The Interparliamentary Alliance on China is a global network of legislators, and it's cross-party. The model is you have co-chairs from different parties. Typically, it would be the two main parties in every country where IPAC is. So you have Republicans and Democrats, Liberals and Labour in Australia, politicians from the left and right in Europe, and the organization has strong representation throughout Asia and Africa as well. So it's very, very effective global network of legislators who are concerned about some of the aggressive actions, human rights abuses that the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, is responsible for at home and abroad. This network has, I think, been quite effective at raising policy issues, at bringing legislators together, and at driving a different global response to the threats posed by the CCP. The result of that has been that the CCP has come to perceive IPAC as a threat. In fact, as part of the sham trial of Jimmy Lai happening in Hong Kong, IPAC members of the IPAC Secretariat have been named as part of that sham trial to try to attack them, basically. So we know now, we didn't know at the time, but we know now that in 2021, IPAC legislators across the world, including here in Canada, were targeted by this CCP-affiliated hacking outfit known as APT31, and that was the subject of the privilege issue.
So, yeah, let's talk a little bit about the targeting of both you as individuals, as members of Parliament, but more largely IPAC. Mr. McKay, when did you find out that you had been targeted back in 2021, and how were you made aware?
Well, Wednesday morning was when I found out, much to my surprise. I wasn't anticipating that. And only, as I say, I was a bit shocked that we would be targeted. And then, of course, it's been unfolding since then, which is kind of regrettable. So I am concerned that we were not notified. Apparently, other members of the larger IPAC group were notified by their governments. And at this point, we still have yet to be notified that we may have been the subject of a targeted attack by what we call APC 31.
Can I just, Mr. Jenis, ask you to expand, like in layman's terms,
Yeah.
we're using words target, like what exactly have you learned about or were told about what you were, like what that targeting involved, what kind of cyber attack, and in layman's terms, what is it?
Yeah, so I'll do my best to kind of break it down. It's a kind of an entry level the start of a progressive reconnaissance attack. So what we know through information gathered by the FBI is that it was called a pixel reconnaissance attack. So there's fake emails, people masquerading as journalists with pictures in them, and those pictures had one or a few pixels in them that was part of a kind of a reconnaissance hacking effort, and designed to get some basic information, IP address.
Get data on you,
Exactly, exactly. And what's important about this sort of attack is it's a part of a progressive attack. So they're trying to get initial information, which they can then use for further surveillance, monitoring, gather additional information, perhaps to shut down or disrupt your presence online. So we know that there was this early stage reconnaissance attack. And why in particular, because of the nature of the attack, it would have been important for us to know about it, is because when you have that kind of early stage type of attack, you can take countermeasures. You can take steps to protect yourself. We were not informed, so we weren't able to take the appropriate steps to protect ourselves.
So my understanding is, and Claire, please do correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. McKay, but essentially the FBI conducted an investigation, was able to determine this. Because of their understanding of the rules around sovereignty, they couldn't directly convey to you, you were being targeted, or other members of parliament, for example, in Canada or one of the other IPAC member countries. So instead, they let the governments of those countries know, and it was up to governments to determine whether to inform individuals. Is that accurate?
I think that's fairly accurate. I mean, we have the RCMP, we have CSIS, we have CSE. You could even say NSICOP, although that's a parliamentary group. And our Parliamentary Protective Service. So who received that communication, I don't really know. I hope to find that out sooner rather than later, and determine why we were kept in the dark for that period of time.
Yeah.
Has there been any outreach, I guess, or communication between yourselves and the federal government in any capacity to try and ascertain who did receive the information and why it wasn't conveyed? I mean, you might have a closer line of communication there.
I have reached out to the person who I think is the relevant minister.
Yeah.
Actually, two of them, and asked for a update as to why I and others were not informed of this attack. At this point, I don't know.
So, and I think part of the context here as well is that there were threats made earlier against Michael Chong's family. Yeah. This has been much discussed, the threats against him and his family that he was not informed about. This was the subject of a question of privilege in a subsequent committee study in the House. And the government committed, well, we're gonna do better in the future.
They issued some directives to that effect even at the time. I recall saying it's, acknowledging at least what you're saying, that the barrier to information shouldn't have existed the way it did, and it should be, navigated differently going forward.
And here we are a year later, right? We're not getting answers. Michael Chong was not informed by the Trudeau government or other members, and here we are a year later. A larger number of parliamentarians affected by a different kind of an attack, and a lot of things were said then, and we're in exactly the same situation. It raises big questions about what's the government doing here, and I mean I share the frustration at not being able to get clear answers even now, even the questions have been asked by us, by journalists, saying what happened here, and the statements that have come out of government ministers have just been very kind of generic and haven't answered the question.
I'll read one of those statements just to be fair, because the Globe and Mail, also to be transparent, the Globe and Mail first reported on this. They reached out to Minister LeBlanc, the Public Safety Minister, and we reached out to get the full statement that he provided. Democracies around the world, the minister wrote, his office wrote, are grappling with the threat of foreign interference from state actors such as China. Following an agreement with all recognized parties in the House, we established the Foreign Interference Commission to examine this threat and formulate recommendations to the government on how to further strengthen its defenses. In the meantime, we're taking action, as we have done for the last number of years, to protect our democracy and our democratic institutions, and that is exactly what we will continue to do in concert with our allies. So nothing that addresses there in that statement, Mr. McKay, the substance of the concern about why you weren't warned. Do you anticipate it will form something of what we hear from the justice leading the foreign interference inquiry? Because her first report actually comes out this Friday.
Yeah, I don't know that it will, because this will not necessarily form a part of her body of evidence. And so she can only comment on what evidence comes before us. So I don't anticipate that. Going back to Michael Chong's situation, I know the mind leaps to that analogy. I would like to hear first from the ministers as to how this happened and whether there is some reason. But on the face of it, Garnet is right. We were not informed. we should have been informed, and this cannot continue to happen because my emails are compromised. If you wrote me an email, you might be potentially compromised. I think the citizens that I represent have every right to expect that when they communicate with their MP, that that's a secure form of communication, and no foreign entity is looking in on that communication.
I just have a minute left, but I wanted to ask each of you to weigh in on the final question, and that is what it says more broadly about the threat that China poses and the specificity with which it is trying to conduct the work it wants to conduct in this country. Garnet,
yeah,
Mr.
look,
Dennis,
the government of the PRC is targeting its critics abroad. Foreign state-backed interference from the PRC, but also from other actors, is a major security threat to our country. My view is that the Trudeau government has been weak, naive, and ineffective in its response to it. And at a minimum, communicating with legislators about these kinds of threats would show that they're taking it seriously. And I still think, after everything that's happened in the last 9 years, certainly in the last couple years, as this has been more in discussion, it still looks like they're not taking it seriously enough. I agree with John that I'd love to hear what the minister has to say on it. The minister's been given an opportunity. I'm sure he'll have more opportunities. I would love to hear what the relevant ministers have to say about this, and I think they should provide real answers to these real questions.
Final point to you, same question.
And we are in a threat environment that we've not anticipated ever in our history. China wishes to turn Canada into a vassal state, and they are using techniques of intrusion and interference that no security services have ever seen. And we are scrambling to keep up, to be candid about it. I think in some respects the Canadian public is alive, become much more alive to this form of threat. And this is not something that we can continue to let go. I do have more confidence than Garnet, possibly, in the response by the government. I would like to hear what that response is before I, as I say, leap to the conclusion that that things weren't handled properly.
Well,
so we agree, bring the minister on the show.
Well, we've invited him, and we'll continue
excellent.
to. Hopefully we'll get him on this week, and he'll be able to provide those answers. I'll leave it there. Mr. Dennis,
Okay.
Mr. McKay, thank you very much,
Thank you,
both of
guys.
you, for making the time for the conversation.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. My computer is struggling. It's not appearing here. It's hard to operate, and I don't want to lose the signal completely, so we're just going to wrap up. I would like to say thank you to everybody watching. A few people came in a little late. Hey, Heidi, Cuba Bound, what's up? Everybody else, I think we caught just about everybody else. Hey, Brock, what's up? It's just a lot of fun hanging out with you guys, like watching these crazy Canadian politics. There are some crazy things happening in Canada right now, and it doesn't look like it's going to slow down. Today was a little more solemn, it seemed. It seemed like, I don't know if people were just cross or if they like had rough nights last night because of what went down yesterday, but it just seemed a little laid back compared to yesterday, which was a wild show. Anyhow, we'll be back tonight. So my time right now is 4:37. We're going to be going tonight, I plan, on 10 o'clock. It's going to be a work in motion, and so I'm not going to give out too many details until I figure out exactly what's going on. But it will be from this channel, and it will be later this evening. Just trying to figure out the time management of all of that and get on a regular schedule. My name's Ehren. This is Question Period Canada. It's been a blast, guys. Always is. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, same format. We'll watch a couple of videos, say hello to everybody, watch the question period, watch a couple of other videos. If my computer decides it wants to continue cooperating, I thought we were going to drop there. Everything shut down here for about 3 or 5 seconds. I think the screen went green maybe on this end. Anyhow, gang, like, subscribe, get notified, share, all that fun stuff. Got to go get busy, get ready for tonight, see what we have planned. And that is it. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll be back tomorrow, and Let a friend know about the show. Get them to come and hang out in the chat room. It's a lot of fun. We're going to wrap up now. And that is it. Take care, everybody. Have a good day.